I need a mate by tomorrow, Alpha said. I rep lead, then you'll have to come and live at my place. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of wet earth and wildflowers.
In a small, quiet village at the edge of the forest, Elara lived in her cozy old cottage. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with worn volumes and journals, each one holding a piece of her thoughts, her dreams, and her small adventures. She liked it that way. Peaceful, predictable, and safe. But tonight, the forest felt different. Shadows moved in unusual ways, and the air seemed heavier. Elara noticed the hairs on her arms rising, though she couldn't say why. She stepped outside, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders. The moon was full, bright and silver, casting a glow over the trees that looked almost alive. Something was coming. And then she heard it. A deep, resonant growl that shook the ground under her feet. It was not the growl of any ordinary animal. This was something else. Something powerful. Something ancient. Her heart beat faster, but she did not run. Instead, she stood firm, curiosity stronger than fear. From the shadows of the trees he emerged, tall, broad, and imposing. The Alpha stepped into the clearing. His eyes were dark pools of power, glowing slightly in the moonlight. Every movement he made seemed deliberate, precise, and commanding. He stopped a few feet from her doorstep, and for a moment the forest fell silent around them. "I need a mate," he said, his voice deep, smooth, and filled with authority. "By tomorrow." Elara blinked. She had heard stories of the Alphas, legendary beings who ruled their packs with strength and cunning, but never had she imagined one standing in front of her, demanding a mate, as if it were the most ordinary request. She took a step forward, squaring her shoulders. She was not afraid, not entirely. There was something mesmerizing about him, something almost magnetic. "Then you'll have to come and live at my place," she replied, her voice calm but steady. The Alpha froze. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Bear. Not with such boldness, not with such certainty. For centuries he had been feared, respected, and obeyed, but never confronted. And here she was, a mere human, daring to challenge him. A slow, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. "You are fearless, or foolish," he said, stepping closer. "Perhaps both." Elara's heart raced, but she kept her gaze steady. Breaths. She had always been independent, never one to follow rules she didn't agree with. If he wanted to enter her life, he would have to respect her terms.
That thought gave her courage. "I am neither afraid nor blind," she said softly.
"I know who you are and I know the stories, but if you come into my home, you must respect me."
"That is my rule." The Alpha studied her, his dark eyes flickering with curiosity and something else. Something softer, though he would never admit it. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "I will stay. But understand this, my world is not safe, and neither am I. If you truly wish to host me, you must be ready for what comes next." Elara did not flinch. She had lived on the edge of the forest for years. She had faced wild animals, storms, and the loneliness of isolation. Whatever danger this Alpha brought, she would meet it head-on. "I am ready," she said. And so he entered her home. The moment he stepped inside, the air seemed to change. The shadows grew longer, curling along the walls, and the fire in her hearth flickered as if caught in a sudden wind. It was subtle, but Alara noticed. There was power here, ancient, raw, and unlike anything she had ever sensed. She felt it brush against her skin, a faint tingling that ran down her spine. They sat across from each other at her small wooden table. He did not eat, did not drink. His presence alone was enough to fill the room. But he did not speak again immediately. He simply watched her, as if trying to understand who she was, what she was, and why she dared to face him without fear. Alara cleared her throat. "You must be tired," she said.
"You came a long way. I do not tire in the way humans do," he replied, his voice calm but carrying weight. "But I have been walking a long path, and I have sought something I have not yet found."
"That is why I came to you." Her curiosity grew. "And what is that?"
He looked at her, his eyes intense. A mate.
"One who will stand beside me, not because she is afraid, but because she chooses to."
Alara smiled faintly. She understood more than he thought.
"Then you have found her," she said simply. The Alpha raised an eyebrow. "Bold words," he said. "Do you understand what you say? Do you understand the life you are stepping into?"
"Yes," she said. "I understand."
"And I choose to step in anyway." For a long while they sat in silence. Outside, the forest rustled as if aware of the presence within her cottage. The night carried a weight of expectation, a feeling that the world itself was holding its breath. Alara felt it too. Something was about to begin, something far greater than either of them could imagine. Finally, the Alpha spoke again. "You are unlike any human I have known. I have lived for centuries, and yet you challenge me without fear. That is rare." Brasp. Alara shrugged, a small smile on her lips. "Perhaps I am just foolish," she said lightly. But inside, her heart thrummed with excitement. She could feel the threads of destiny weaving between them, pulling them closer in ways she could not yet understand. Hours passed and the night deepened. The moon climbed higher, casting silver light through her windows. But he declined, choosing instead to stand near the window, gazing at the forest. Something troubled him, a shadow in his expression that made him seem both fierce and vulnerable. "Pray, what haunts you?" she asked softly, stepping closer. He did not answer immediately. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words. Finally he spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "A curse, a burden that has lasted centuries. I am not free, and until I find my true mate, my pack suffers, my enemies linger, and the darkness waits." Alara's eyes widened slightly. She had expected danger, but not curses or centuries of pain. Yet instead of fear, she felt a surge of determination. "Then we will face it together," she said firmly. "If you cannot be free alone, perhaps together we can find a way." The Alpha's gaze softened for the briefest moment. It was almost imperceptible, but Alara noticed. No one had ever offered him partnership, hope, or understanding, not in centuries. And here she was, daring to offer both, simply by choosing to remain brave and resolute. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint whisper of something unseen, a shadow moving among the trees, observing, waiting. The forest had noticed too. The Alpha's arrival had stirred more than just her life. Birth. Old forces, forgotten for centuries, had begun to awaken. Alara did not know this yet, but she only knew the strange excitement that coursed through her veins. The night was long, the air thick with anticipation. And in that small cottage, two worlds collided. One human, ordinary yet brave, the other supernatural, ancient and burdened by a curse. As the first hints of dawn touched the sky, Elara felt the Alpha's eyes on her. They were no longer merely commanding. They were searching, questioning, and, perhaps, hoping.
She returned his gaze, steady and unwavering.
Breath. Neither spoke again, but both understood. Life, as they had known it, had ended. Something extraordinary was beginning. Something that would test courage, strength, and hearts alike. And somewhere in the forest, hidden by shadow and mist, unseen eyes watched them both. The Alpha was not the only one aware of the bond forming, and soon Elara would learn that choosing to host him was only the first step in a journey fraught with danger, magic, and fate. The night stretched on, but for the first time in centuries the Alpha felt something unfamiliar. A flicker of warmth, of trust, of connection. And for Elara, the fear she might have felt was replaced by curiosity and courage. Breaths. Tomorrow their journey would truly begin. But tonight, the cottage was a sanctuary, fragile yet defiant, a place where destiny had stepped in, quietly and irrevocably. And as Elara drifted into a restless sleep, she felt it deep in her bones. The Alpha's arrival was only the beginning. The shadows outside stirred once more. The forest had seen them, and it whispered secrets that neither of them were yet ready to understand. The first rays of dawn seeped through the small windows of Elara's cottage, painting the room with soft gold. Rasp. Outside, the forest was alive with birdsong and the quiet rustle of leaves. But inside, the atmosphere was heavy with a different kind of tension. The Alpha had stayed awake all night, standing silently by the window, watching the forest as if it held some secret only he could see. Elara had pretended to sleep, though she had been wide awake studying him in the dim light. He was a creature of contrast, strong, commanding, yet there was a loneliness that clung to him like a shadow. By morning, the air between them was charged. The Alpha's eyes, dark and intense, followed her every movement. Elara, for her part, refused to look away, though her heart beat rapidly in her chest. She felt it too, the pull between them. Something intangible yet undeniable.
I hope you slept, she said cautiously, setting down a steaming cup of herbal tea on the table.
I do not require sleep as humans do, he replied, his deep voice steady, almost musical. Yet there was a hint of tiredness behind the strength in his tone, something that spoke of centuries of solitude. Elara hesitated, then said, You must rest at some point. Even the strongest beings need peace. The Alpha looked at her, a flicker of something softer in his expression. Peace has been scarce in my life, he admitted quietly. Perhaps this place can offer it. For a time. For a moment the words hung in the air like fragile glass. Elara sensed the weight of them, the centuries of battles, betrayals, and solitude that clung to him. But she realized that he had lived far longer than any human, yet he had known far less joy. They shared breakfast in silence. Neither was accustomed to this domesticity, yet neither seemed inclined to break it. When she spoke of small matters, gardening, the arrival of spring, her books, the Alpha listened with careful attention. It was not curiosity alone that drew him. It was the rare presence of someone who saw him not as a ruler or a predator, but as a being in need of connection. After the meal, he rose and moved to the door. I will patrol the perimeter, he said. There may be threats you cannot see. Elara frowned. Threats? What kind of threats? The forest has eyes, he said simply.
Not all creatures welcome the presence of humans, and not all spirits are forgiving.
Though she wanted to argue, she didn't. She had lived on the edge of the forest for years and had learned to respect its moods and dangers. Then I will accompany you, she said. I know the forest as well as anyone can. He studied her for a long moment.
You are brave or reckless, perhaps both.
Very well, I will allow it. They stepped into the early morning mist, the dew soaking through their shoes. The forest was quiet, but the Alpha's senses were alert. Every rustle, every shadow, every distant call of an animal drew his attention. Elara felt the intensity of his presence as they walked, the strength beneath his calm exterior, the power in each measured step. You move like you belong here, he said after a while, breaking the silence. I grew up on the edge of this forest, she replied. I know when it's restless. The Alpha nodded slightly as if approving her skill. And then, without warning, he stopped. His gaze was fixed on a small clearing ahead, where the light of the rising sun revealed a shimmering figure among the trees. Elara squinted. What is it?
An echo, a memory of the past, he said quietly. His eyes darkened.
It is warning us. Before she could ask more, a sudden rustling in the underbrush made them both tense. Shadows shifted unnaturally, forming shapes that did not belong to any ordinary animal. Breath. Elara felt a chill crawl up her spine. Stay close, the Alpha instructed, his tone low but commanding. This is no ordinary threat. They moved together, silent, synchronized, like two halves of a single being. The shadows advanced, revealing themselves as twisted spirits, remnants of past betrayals and curses that lingered in the forest. They swirled around the clearing, whispering in voices that seemed to echo through time. Elara shivered but did not run. Instead, she focused, recalling the stories she had read in the old tomes about spirits and curses. She remembered the rituals, the protections, the ways to calm restless souls. These spirits, they are bound to something, she said. The curse is not just on the forest, it reaches into your life. The Alpha's gaze softened as he looked at her. You understand more than I expected, he said. Few have ever faced them and lived to speak. Desk. Elara took a step forward. Then let me help. With careful gestures, she drew protective symbols in the soil, her hands steady despite the fear prickling her nerves. The spirits shrieked and swirled faster, but the Alpha placed his hands over hers, guiding her, lending his energy to strengthen the wards she created. Together they formed a protective circle, a combination of human skill and supernatural power. Slowly the spirits recoiled, their forms dissipating like smoke in the wind. The forest fell silent once more, but the weight of the encounter lingered. Elara looked at the Alpha, her chest heaving. Are you okay? He nodded, though his expression was heavy. For now, he said.
But this is only the beginning. The curse.
It waits for the right moment to strike again. Elara felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The forest was dangerous, yes, but it was alive, and she was part of it now, part of something larger than herself. And the Alpha, he was no longer just a stranger in her home. He was a force, a mystery, and a presence that pulled at her in ways she did not yet understand. Over the next days, life in the cottage settled into a strange rhythm. The Alpha patrolled the forest during the day, sometimes returning with glimpses of danger, sometimes with stories of creatures long forgotten. Elara tended her garden, prepared meals, and studied the ancient tomes she had uncovered in the secret section of her home. She learned more about the Alpha's kind, the curses, the powers, and the rules of their world, Desco. She also learned about him, the centuries of solitude, the losses, and the burden of leadership. He rarely spoke of his emotions, but in small moments she glimpsed them. The way his gaze lingered on a bird's flight, the softness in his voice when he spoke of the past, the fleeting hesitation before he made a decision. One evening under a sky painted with the colors of sunset, Elara dared to speak. "Do you ever wish you could be free of it all?" she asked, nodding toward the forest. He did not answer immediately. Desk, he stared at the horizon, the wind ruffling his dark hair. Freedom is,
I have lived for centuries, yet true freedom has eluded me. Every choice I make is tied to the curse, to the pack, to the world around me. Alara stepped closer. "Then let me be a part of your freedom," she said gently.
I do not fear what comes. I will stand with you. For a long moment he studied her, and something flickered in his eyes, a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and something else he did not name. Few offer such courage, he said quietly. Few are still with understanding. Perhaps you are more than I expected. As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows crept across the forest floor. The Alpha moved to the window, his eyes scanning the distance. "There is more to come," he said. "The curse and the enemies it has created will not rest." Elara touched his arm lightly. "Then we will face it together," she said. The Alpha did not speak, but the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. For the first time in centuries, he allowed himself a fragment of trust, a sliver of hope. Breath that night. As the cottage settled into quiet, the forest stirred. Shadows moved in the distance, whispering secrets of ancient grudges and old magic. Elara and the Alpha slept, or rather rested. But the bond between them had begun. Invisible threads of connection, trust, and shared purpose had formed. And somewhere deep in the forest, unseen eyes watched them. The Alpha's enemies, aware of the budding bond and the courage of the human who had dared to challenge him, waited breaths. They knew that the true test was not yet over, and that the coming days would bring choices that could change their lives forever. Elara dreamed of the forest, of shadows and whispers, of power and darkness. She felt the Alpha near her, a constant presence even in sleep. And though fear lingered, it was tempered by excitement, a knowledge that she had stepped into a world larger, stranger, and far more magical than she had ever imagined. The cottage, small and humble, had become the center of something extraordinary. And as dawn approached once more, Elara and the Alpha would awaken not merely to a new day, but to a new chapter in their lives. A chapter of danger, trust, and a bond that could change the fate of both human and supernatural worlds. The forest was quieter than usual that night. Yet the stillness carried a strange tension. Shadows twisted unnaturally around the trees, and the moonlight seemed sharper, reflecting off the leaves like cold silver. Base. Inside her cottage, Elara could feel it too, the weight of something unseen pressing against the walls, a feeling that both thrilled and frightened her. She had grown accustomed to the Alpha's presence, yet there were times when his energy, so vast and commanding, overwhelmed her senses. That night, as she prepared a small dinner, she felt a pull in the air, subtle but persistent. It was as though the forest itself was trying to tell her something, warning her of what was to come. The Alpha was silent, standing near the window, watching the tree line with eyes that glimmered faintly. He had said nothing since sunset, but Elara knew him well enough now to sense the storm of thoughts behind his calm exterior. Something was troubling him, though he would not admit it aloud. "Elara," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "There is darkness coming that you cannot yet see. I have fought it for centuries, but even I do not know how strong it has become." Her heart beat faster, but she held his gaze. Then we will face it together, she said softly. Whatever comes, we can fight it.
He studied her for a long moment, as if trying to measure her courage, her resolve, her very soul. Finally, he nodded.
Perhaps you are braver than most I have known, he admitted.
Or perhaps you are reckless.
Either way, you are here, and there is no turning back. The first signs of trouble came just after midnight. Inspiration. A faint glow appeared at the edge of the forest, pulsating like a heartbeat. Elara felt a chill run down her spine. She knew instinctively that it was connected to the curse, to the spirits that had once attacked him. The Alpha moved to the door, his body tense, every muscle ready. "Stay close," he instructed, and without waiting for her response, he stepped outside. Elara followed, her feet silent on the soft earth. The glow grew brighter as they approached a small clearing, revealing shadows that danced unnaturally. They were not like the spirits they had seen before. These were stronger, more focused, and filled with an intelligence that made the hair on the back of her neck rise. "They are testing us," the Alpha said quietly. "These shadows are echoes of the curse, remnants of anger and betrayal. They will try to weaken our bond, to turn us against each other." Elara's eyes widened. "Against each other?" He nodded. "The curse feeds on doubt, fear, and mistrust. If it can create even a flicker of conflict between us, it will grow stronger." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Then we will not let it," she said firmly. The shadows began to move closer, circling them like silent predators. Elara felt a strange pull in her chest, a connection to the Alpha she could not fully explain. It was as if his power and her own courage had created a link, invisible but undeniable. Breath. She reached for his hand, and he took it without hesitation. Instantly, a warmth spread through her, a mixture of strength and reassurance. The shadows hesitated, sensing the bond between them, but they did not retreat. Instead, they lunged forward, forcing the Alpha and Elara to fight. He moved with precision and power, his movements fluid and controlled. Elara followed his lead, using her knowledge of the forest and the protective symbols she had learned to ward off the shadows. Breath. Together they formed a circle of energy, combining human skill with supernatural strength. Hours passed in a blur of motion, whispers, and flickering light. The shadows were relentless, testing every aspect of their bond, probing their fears and weaknesses. Elara felt exhaustion creeping in, but she refused to falter. She would not let the curse win. At one point, a shadow managed to slip through their defenses, wrapping around her like a cold mist. She gasped, feeling its weight pressing against her chest, threatening to overwhelm her. But before panic could take hold, the Alpha was there, his hand on hers, his eyes locking with hers. "Focus on me," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Do not let it touch you. Trust in us." And in that moment, she did. She felt the warmth of his energy flowing through her, guiding her, protecting her. With a surge of courage, she pushed back, and the shadow dissipated like smoke in the wind. When the last of the shadows vanished, the clearing was silent once more. The moonlight reflected off the dew-covered leaves, and for a moment everything seemed calm. Elara felt her knees weaken from exhaustion, and the Alpha caught her before she fell. "You did well," he said quietly, his eyes scanning hers. Breath. Few could have faced that and remained strong. Elara smiled faintly, though her body trembled from the effort. "We did it together," she corrected. Great. He looked at her, and for the first time, his expression softened completely. There was no command, no dominance, only something human and vulnerable. Together, he agreed. They returned to the cottage in silence, each lost in their thoughts. Elara wondered about the nature of the curse, about the shadows, and about the depths of the Alpha's power. She also wondered about the connection she felt with him, the way his presence seemed to touch something deep inside her, something she could not yet name. Inside, they lit a fire to chase away the chill. The Alpha remained quiet, staring into the flames, his mind clearly still troubled. Elara sat across from him, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She wanted to speak, to break the silence, but the weight of the night held her tongue. Finally, he spoke. The curse is more complex than I feared. It is not merely a danger to my pack or my life. It is tied to fate itself, to choices made long ago, and to bonds that were broken. Elara listened intently. Then we must be careful, she said softly. We must trust each other completely. The bond between us, it can protect us if we let it. The Alpha's gaze met hers, intense and unreadable. Trust is difficult, he admitted. I have spent centuries alone. To trust is to risk everything. Elara leaned forward slightly. Then we risk together, she said firmly. I am not afraid. I will stand by you no matter what comes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded slowly, as if sealing an unspoken pact. Very well, he said. We will face this together, but understand, the curse will not wait for us to be ready. It will come when we least expect it. The night stretched on, and sleep remained elusive. Elara lay in her bed, listening to the forest outside, aware that the shadows might return at any moment. She thought about the Alpha, about the strength and loneliness in his eyes, and about the strange, growing connection between them. Meanwhile, the Alpha remained awake, standing at the window, his senses alert to every movement in the forest. He could feel the threads of the curse pulling at him, testing his will, probing for weakness. But tonight, something was different. The human who had dared to speak to him, to challenge him, to trust him, she had changed the balance. The bond they shared, fragile and new, was stronger than either of them realized. It was more than courage. It was connection, understanding, and choice. And for the first time in centuries, the Alpha felt hope, faint, fragile, but undeniable. But the darkness was not idle. In the depths of the forest, unseen figures moved, whispering among themselves. The spirits had returned, stronger than before, drawn by the new bond between human and Alpha. They hungered for chaos, for doubt, for fear, and they would not rest until they tested the strength of the pair. Elara dreamt of the forest that night, of shadows that whispered her name, and of the Alpha standing tall and strong beside her. She felt the power and warmth of his presence even in sleep, and though the visions were frightening, they were tempered by courage and connection. When morning came, the forest was quiet once more, though an unease lingered in the air. Elara rose, determined to face whatever came next. She knew now that the bond she shared with the Alpha was not just emotional, it was magical, tied to the fate of the forest, the curse, and the world around them. The Alpha watched her as she moved through the cottage, a faint glimmer of pride in his eyes. You are stronger than I imagined, he said quietly.
And you're not as untouchable as you seem, she replied softly, a hint of a smile playing on her lips.
The tension between them, both romantic and dangerous, had grown deeper. They had faced the shadows together and in doing so had begun to trust, to understand, and to rely on each other. But both knew the darkness was far from over. In the heart of the forest, the spirits stirred once again. Their whispers carried a warning. The bond had been formed, But the test was only beginning. Soon, both human and Alpha would face challenges that could either strengthen them forever or destroy everything they had built. Elara and the Alpha were unaware of the exact danger, but both felt it approaching. And though fear lingered, there was also determination, courage, and a growing connection that neither could deny. The forest held its breath. The curse waited. And in the cottage at the edge of the woods, the bond between human and Alpha grew stronger, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The wind howled through the forest like a living thing, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant danger. Elara stood at the edge of her cottage, her eyes scanning the shadows that danced between the trees. The glow she had seen the night before was back, brighter and more menacing. She could feel it deep in her bones. The curse was coming for them, and this time it would not hold back. Past. The Alpha emerged silently from the cottage, his presence commanding even in the restless night. His dark eyes flicked toward the forest, reading the movements and whispers of unseen forces. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready for battle, yet there was a calm that only centuries of experience could create. Elara, he said, his voice low but steady. We cannot wait. Whatever is coming, it will test us beyond anything we have faced before.
She nodded, gripping the small pendant around her neck that she always wore for courage.
Then we will face it together, she said. I am not afraid. He studied her for a long moment, a mixture of awe and something softer, hope shimmering in his eyes. Bah. Few humans would stand with me now, he said quietly. Even fewer would be ready for what comes next. The glow in the forest shifted, pulsing like a heartbeat. Shadows began to take shape, forming into figures that were both beautiful and terrifying. They were echoes of the past, spirits bound by the curse, carrying anger, betrayal, and longing. At their center was a figure that radiated power, a spectral queen whose eyes burned with centuries-old vengeance. The source of the curse, the Alpha murmured. His jaw tightened. She is older than I imagined. She will not relent until she has destroyed everything I hold dear. Elara stepped closer to him, her hand brushing his. Then let us show her that we are stronger together, she said. Her courage steadied him, just as his strength steadied her. Together they stepped into the clearing, facing the queen and her legions of shadows. The Alpha's power flared, a dark aura rippling around him, while Elara felt her own energy awaken, an echo of the bond they had formed.
It was as if the courage, trust, and connection they shared had awakened something ancient and protective within her.
The queen's voice echoed across the forest, soft yet commanding. Fools, she whispered. But do you think you can challenge centuries of wrath? Do you think a mortal can stand against me? Elara's voice rang out clear and strong. We do not stand alone, she said. We stand together, and that is stronger than any curse you have ever known.
The shadows surged forward, and the Alpha moved like lightning, deflecting attacks with strength and precision. Elara followed, using her knowledge of protective symbols in the forest itself to ward off the lesser spirits.
Breaths. Together they created a circle of light and power that pushed back the darkness.
But the queen was relentless.
She struck at the Alpha with tendrils of energy that threatened to pull him into the past, to make him relive centuries of betrayal and loss. Elara sensed the pull, too, and without thinking she reached out, letting the bond between them flow freely. Her courage, her trust, her willingness to face the danger alongside him, acted like a shield. The tendrils faltered.
The Alpha seized the moment. With a roar that echoed through the trees, he channeled his full power, combining it with the energy Elara had awakened.
Breath. Together their bond became a force of light that cut through the shadows, forcing the queen to retreat, her screams echoing like thunder. But the queen would not give up easily. She summoned the last of her strength, forming a massive shadow that towered over them. The Alpha's eyes met Alara's, and he said softly, "Trust me. We can do this, but we must act as one." Alara nodded, her heart pounding. "I trust you," she said, "with everything I am." They stepped forward together, their hands entwined. The bond they had formed, the trust, courage, and shared purpose, amplified their power. Light radiated from them, pure and unwavering, and it struck the shadow with the force of the sun. The queen shrieked, her form unraveling, and the darkness dissipated, like mist in the morning. When the last of the shadows vanished, the clearing was silent. The forest itself seemed to breathe as if relieved. Alara leaned against the Alpha, exhausted but triumphant. He held her close, and for the first time there was no distance between them, no fear, no mistrust, only connection. "You were remarkable," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "I feared for you, yet you stood strong. You changed the outcome."
Alara smiled faintly, her fingers brushing his. "We changed it together," she said.
They returned to the cottage, the forest around them now quiet and still. The threat had passed, at least for now, but both knew that their lives had been transformed forever. The Alpha was no longer a distant, untouchable figure. He was a partner, someone who could rely on trust and courage as much as power, breath. And Alara, she was no longer just a human living on the edge of the forest. She was part of something extraordinary, bound to a world of magic, courage, and destiny. Breaths. That night, as they sat together by the fire, neither spoke immediately. Words seemed unnecessary. The bond they had forged was deeper than language, a connection that could not be broken by time, fear, or even darkness. Finally, the Alpha spoke. "Alara, you have changed me," he said quietly. "I have lived for centuries, burdened by curses and solitude, and yet I feel hope, warmth, and a trust I have never known. You have brought light into a life that has known too much shadow."
Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes.
"And you have shown me strength I did not know I possessed," she replied. "You taught me courage, patience, and the power of believing in someone."
He leaned closer, resting his forehead against hers.
This bond.
It is not only for survival. It is for choice, for trust, for a future we can share. Alara nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle deep in her heart. For the first time, she felt truly understood, truly seen, and truly part of a world larger than herself. Outside, the forest seemed calmer, the shadows retreating to their corners. The curse had been weakened, but its presence remained as a reminder that danger was never truly gone. Yet the Alpha and Alara had proven that together they could face anything. Days passed, and life slowly returned to a rhythm, though now it was a rhythm shared between two beings of different worlds. The Alpha patrolled the forest, always alert, while Alara tended her home and studied the tomes that had once held only distant knowledge. Their evenings were spent together, talking, sharing stories, and quietly enjoying the presence of the other. And yet, even in peace, the bond between them continued to grow. It was more than survival or magic. It was trust, friendship, and a deep, unspoken love that neither could ignore. Every glance, every touch, every shared moment strengthened their connection, building a foundation for the challenges yet to come. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the forest in gold and crimson, the Alpha turned to Alara. "The curse may return one day," he said. "But now I know we can face it together." "And that is more than enough." Alara smiled, resting her hand on his arm. "Dasp. Then we will face it," she said softly. "Together. Always." For the first time, the Alpha allowed himself a faint, almost human smile. "Together," he agreed. The forest around them seemed to settle, as if acknowledging the bond they had forged. The shadows had not vanished completely, but they no longer held the same power. Light and trust had returned to the forest, changing it, and perhaps even healing it. That night, as they slept, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying a sense of peace and possibility. The Alpha and Alara lay side by side, no longer just protector and human, but partners, bound by courage, trust, and the choice to face whatever darkness might come. In the days that followed, the cottage became a sanctuary not only for them, but for the forest itself. Alara's bravery and wisdom, combined with the Alpha's strength and experience, created a balance that even the ancient curse could not undo. And though danger might always linger in the edges of the forest, the bond between them was now unbreakable. A promise of trust, courage, and love that could withstand even the darkest of nights. The forest had tested them. The shadows had tried to divide them, but together they had forged something eternal.